Hey guys, welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. Today, I'm going to be having a very interesting conversation that is centering around, adoption of race-based ideology. And I have a special guest here with me today, Violette Simard. Am I getting the
Yeah,
pronunciation right?
yeah,
Violette,
yeah.
right?
Pronouncing is good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good. So, we're going to be covering issues surrounding racial identity, especially from the angle of a biracial person. I mean, um, I think biracial people come with a unique perspective when it comes to race because they have ancestry from say the Caucasian race and maybe ancestry from the African race, and both worlds sort of meet in them, and um, you know, and I think that at times there might be some struggle with identity. Where do I belong? Do I belong here? Do I belong here? And there might also be some struggle with acceptance. Is this group willing to accept me wholly or fully as part of us? Was the other group willing to accept me wholly and fully as part of us? So that is what this conversation is going to center around today. It's going to center around coming from a place where race wasn't really an issue to adopting race-based woke ideology, and then finding yourself back to sort of where you started from initially. So before we start, I want to say a very big thank you to all of you who always come to my live stream. I appreciate you guys, and shout out to Steve Jordan, who is my Patreon. So you can support this channel on Patreon, and you can always like, share, watch, and I always appreciate it when you do that. So welcome guys to the conversation. So Violette, welcome to the conversation. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. So my name is Violette. I'm from Montreal, Canada, and I've been introduced to this podcast by Charles through Discord. I'm new to this raceless, I guess, terrain, and so I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you all today.
Great. So Violette, can you tell us a little bit about your ancestry? What is your ancestry like? Where are your
Sure.
parents from? What just give us a little background about that.
Absolutely. So, my mom is from Jamaica. She's a black woman from Jamaica, and my father is mixed as well. He's half Lebanese, half white from Quebec, and so that's my, I guess, ethnic background. And I was born and raised in Montreal, which is a very cosmopolitan city in and of itself, so very diverse. And yeah, so being mixed, my household was extremely mixed as well. My friend groups, my neighborhoods, my school, all of that reflected, I guess, my mixed ancestry in a way.
Okay. So is Montreal sort of a French Canadian city? Would
Very
you
much
describe it
so.
more as a French Canadian city?
Yes, so
Oh, so
Montreal.
how many of the provinces in Canada are French dominant as opposed to English dominant?
Yes, so Canada has 10 provinces, and Quebec is the only one that's very hell bent on keeping the francophone tradition. Quebec is very, very francophone compared to Ontario or British Columbia or any of the other provinces. And so Montreal is still very bilingual and very multi ethnic, but has very much of that francophone essence.
Mm. So you speak excellent French, and obviously you speak superb English.
Yes, so yes, French is I mean, I grew up speaking English with my mom and then French with my dad, but I did most of my education in French. Only studied
Oh,
university in English. So yeah.
so in Quebec, the school children are taught in French.
Yes. The only way you could study in English if one of your parents did their school in English. It's a weird system, but for the most part, children have to go to school in French. Yeah.
Mm, that's cool. That's cool. it's cool to be able to speak multiple languages.
Yes, for
Are
sure.
you picking up any other language? Are you picking
I
up
do. I
Spanish, German,
do.
Lebanese? Do
I
you
actually,
speak
unfortunately,
Lebanese?
I don't speak Arabic, but that is on my list. I understand and speak a bit of Jamaican patois. I also speak, I have a pretty advanced level in Spanish, and then I'm in the process of learning Brazilian Portuguese. So I love learning
Oh,
new languages. Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
How would you say you're sort of good with picking up languages? Do they come naturally to you, or do you
I think
struggle to?
so. I think so. I like learning languages, and so I think it's a.
Oh man, I'm jealous now. I'm jealous right now because I suck with languages, and
Oh no, it's
it's
okay. It's
I
okay. It's
yeah
I guess.
I,
Sorry, I think you.
I
I
wish I
keep cutting
could.
you off.
Yeah, I wish I could pick up languages that easily, but no, it doesn't really happen for me so much so well. But I think I'll try in the future. So
Yes.
you mentioned something about Arabic. Is Lebanese, are they Arabs? Is Arabic their language in
Yes, they
Lebanon,
speak Arab.
or
Yeah.
they speak Arabic? But is there a local language as well aside Arabic?
I don't think so. No, it's French. French, English, and Arabic are the languages for Lebanon.
Hmm. Okay, that's
Hmm.
good. That's good. So basically, you were born in sort of a mixed race household.
Hmm.
Your mom is Jamaican black,
Yeah.
and your dad is white, say Lebanese and Canadian white. So,
Hmm.
how was it like in your household? What was what was the conversation around? Was there any consciousness about race growing up in your household, in your immediate environment, in maybe even in school, within your family, your extended family? What was the interactions? What was the racial interactions? What were the racial themes that were present in your household while you were growing up as a child?
Hmm. Um, I think my experience was really particular. I don't think it was many of the cases for other people, but for my case, race was not a thing. I was very aware of like my cultural heritage and that sort of thing, but we didn't speak of ourselves as in racial terms. What was the focus was, I guess, understanding who you are as a person first and foremost, and then after that came the understanding, okay, well, from Jamaica, this is the culture. In Lebanon, this is how you do things. But it was still very much open. I don't understand how to. I'm not sure if I'm being clear, but I mean, race was not a thing, is how I would put it. And then when it came to understanding who I was racially, it was clear that I was mixed, that, I had Jamaican background, Lebanese background, white background. But it was never the focus. Um, and then family wise, I think like I was very close to my Jamaican family, as well as my white family as well. And there was never any weird treatment or, different treatment because I wasn't of the same background.
Okay, so did you ever get asked at any point while you were growing up what race you were? As in, did that conversation ever come up from anyone? Maybe not within your immediate family, but say from someone from outside.
Yes, so that was a common thing once I was outside of my house. So school, when I went to school, it was often asked like, "Oh, what are you like?" What it came also with a bit of confusion, like not understanding that because a lot of people assumed that I was black, and then I would correct them and say, "No, no, I'm half black and this and this." And I'd be like, "Oh, okay," and kind of some people would just accept it for what it is, but for a lot of people, it was confusing because I wasn't I didn't belong to any clear cut category. Um, and it was difficult at first to understand because for me it wasn't an issue. So I had a hard time understanding why for somebody else it could be an issue. Um, but also the thing is that in my school it was very multi-ethnic as well. So the conversation around race, like, once again, was a bit secondary because everyone came from different parts of the world. So it was kind of normal to be surrounded by people who weren't necessarily the same racially.
Mm. So it's safe to assume that in your formative years, you were sort of brought up in quote raceless environments. You weren't overtly conscious of your race, and you did not particularly identify with one racial group over the other, right? Okay.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
so I was reading your article from Woke to Awakened, and there was a place where you stated that at a certain point you felt the need to fit into black culture. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to understand, why did you feel that need? What was the compelling reason why you felt the need? Because understanding your history, that you hadn't you hadn't race wasn't a factor, it wasn't a predominant factor at all in your upbringing. So what happened that made you all of a sudden now want to identify strongly with one part of your ancestry?
Mm-hmm. Hmm. That happened towards my later years in high school, where I was kind of developing my taste for R&B music, and a lot of Black American culture really interested me. And so I was trying to find belonging with people who also had that taste in music, fashion, or art. And now I could recognize that that's what it was. It was more of an interest, a cultural interest, much more than it was racial. But back then, I understood it as, oh, well, I have to find my Black peers. I need to find belonging in a Black group, right? Because I assumed that once you were Black, you had the similar tastes. So that was kind of like my thought process. And so I tried really hard to make friends with Black people, just thinking I would find, I guess, kinship um, in that regard. And that's when my racial identity became a problem, because to them, they understood that I was partially Black, but I wasn't acting Black or didn't have the same, I guess, idioms or what have you. And so that's when I decided, okay, let me just adapt in a way so I could be accepted by my Black peers.
Okay, so you're wanting to adopt black ideology or black identity um, was an internal thing. There wasn't any external pressure at first, but once you began to associate yourself with more black people, you felt much more need to sort of conform to what is in quotes authentically black, right? Because somewhat you were seen as not black in the sense that maybe you didn't act the way they would consider a typical black person would act. Was that the case?
Exactly. That was exactly the case. And it was disheartening for me because, for example, with my Jamaican cousins, that was never a case, which I guess is normal since we're family. But I thought I would find that as well in friendships or in other Black peers around me. And so I conformed a bit to, I guess, the stereotypical Black behavior, um, in hopes of being like accepted, and then that down the line transformed into adopting a woke perspective, because it it brought a positive reaction to the Black people that I was trying to be friends with. So being woke was like my in to being friends with more Black people in a way.
I see. So at the point in your life where you were trying to identify more with your black side, you discovered woke ideology. Were you ever privy to, did you ever have any interactions with such ideology in the first place? And did they ever appeal to you outside the desire to be much more accepted by racialized black people?
That's an interesting question, because being woke to me initially meant just having the basic compassion and empathy to understand what's fair and what isn't fair in treating other people. And then in discovering I guess, in later on, in the beginning of my university studies and discovering, colonial history much more in depth, um, adopting a woke mentality became easier in a way because I now had the vocabulary and like the academic, um, I guess, tools to legitimize such a mindset, and so embracing a woke mentality became, I guess, a part of who I was because now I discovered an interest in a certain history that kind of aligned with a certain, like, the woke mentality in a way. I don't know if that makes sense. Let me know if I could be a little more clear.
Okay, so you you were you were familiar with the concept of wokeness in the sense of being aware of maybe social issues, social injustices, right? So
Exactly.
it made it easier for you to sort of associate with, or maybe you took it a step further, by associating being aware to to injustices, to say struggles of black people. You get, is that the sense in which you saw it? So you took it from just being aware of social injustice, and you now racialized that social injustice and then identified with it. So in your life, I would say that racial racial issues were never a source of concern for you. There wasn't any significant impact of maybe because of your ancestry, you've had maybe discrimination or you've had a tough life and all that. But from your article, I began to see that at a certain point, you felt that you felt maybe that, would I say, victimhood. You felt you sort of took on that pain, or you sort of took on that mentality, you took on that um, they'll call it victim mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the case, that you took it on just
Yeah.
to, to feel more, to feel that you belong more to a certain group?
That is exactly it. I took it on and I made it my personality when to begin with it really wasn't because my circumstances are, what we call privileged. I grew up fine. I had, up, I guess, middle to upper middle class. I got great education. My neighborhood is like a nice neighborhood. So I wasn't I like I I took on that strife even though my realities were like the opposite of what that strife is characterized as.
So how real were those feelings to you? Were you simply acting them out, or did you actually feel at those moments? Did you feel those weights, those pain, those? Did you become much more aware of, people saying things and you interpreting them in a racial manner? Was it theatrics, or was it real?
It was real. I really deeply internalized everything. It wasn't an act. It became a genuine part of who I was, and I kind of morphed into this person. Initially, it was to fit in, but then it did become who I was at a certain point in time. Um, and adopting that victimhood, it was a weird thing for me. I did it. So adopting the victimhood came from, like I said, studying colonialism and then tying that history, bringing it back to me personally and tying it back to my ancestry. Although it might not be the case for sure. I mean, 100%. I made it my history. So I made colonial history into my own story, and then I kind of weaved it into my personality in that way.
So you sort of made history your reality. You took what had happened in history, you brought it to the present, and you started living in it. And the impact was just as real as someone who had gone through those things. So even though you had not gone through those things, you were able to somewhat trick yourself into believing that you're actually going through those things right now, and it became a source of anguish for you. So this
Exactly.
sort of relates very clearly to, I'm sure you know Kimi Katiti. I had her in a conversation um,
Oh yeah.
months ago, and she had a similar story where um, And at a certain point when we were talking, she said it literally made her sick, as in
Mm.
having to internalize all those negativity literally made her sick. You understand? And
Yes.
it it just goes to tell you what an ideology can do to people. You understand how people can trick themselves mentally and put themselves in a space that is not conducive for their well-being just because they are seeking a certain goal. They're aspiring to something. You understand? So
Yes.
in your case, it was your desire to fit in. Yeah, go ahead. You want to comment?
Yes. But the thing is, to fit in was, I guess, the starting point, but then it became much bigger than that. I think I got over fitting in and discovered, I guess, a passion for history, but then I took it personally instead of, leaving it as just, something I could study, something I could research. I made it my life. And it was a weird, looking back now, it's a weird way of looking at things, but it was my way of, I guess, making my mark in the Black community, or making space for myself in the Black community, because I understood it as being the only way to do so, right? To relate to that kind of history.
So why was it so important for you to be seen as black? Why was it
Mhm.
so important for you at that point in time?
It was a weird thing where, I was raised to be very, like, self-aware and to have a very strong understanding of who I am as a person, and that was always there in the back of my mind. But I guess beyond that, I was trying to make, I guess, to create my own sense of self. And in venturing into that, I went down the slippery slope of adopting woke identity, or woke mindset. And I don't know. I guess it was my way of finding some form of kinship and some form of belonging. And it was my way of defining my blackness, even though I knew it wasn't what I should do. I just did it because I saw so many people around me doing it. And I also saw the positive reaction it got from people once they heard me speak in that way. So it was a weird, adopting woke mindset was a weird quest for identity at the same time.
So somewhat you were getting some social currency from acting in that way, from taking on the racial struggle. We were getting some social currency, and it felt good that you people were responding positively. So the people that responded positively to you in that regard, were they just racialized black people, or both racialized white people and racialized black people? They responded positively to you, that now you have understood what it means to align with the struggles of people in quotes minorities.
Mm-hmm. I got, I guess, a positive reaction from both white and black, but mainly, it was my way of relating to black peers. So it was mostly directed to black people, and so black people they were like, oh, okay, so she knows what she's talking about. She's aware of who she is racially, so she's cool. She's down with the stuff. So that's why I did it. With my white friends, I didn't really express that side of myself. I kind of switched back and forth depending on who I was speaking with.
Mm, no. So was it ever a source of tension with, say, your white friends? Did it become a source of tension? Because I think you said you sort of switched, so it may not be so. But if someone had caught you unawares in a situation where you can't just back out, you had to choose um, to act in a certain way. Did it ever become a source of tension for you, between you um, and your white friends?
Um, no, not necessarily. If anything, it caused source of tension within me and myself more than anything. I think, um, people. I don't know how to explain it, but I guess I was used to adjusting the way I speak depending on who I was with. It wasn't a matter of changing who I was as a whole, but just adapting my speech depending on the circumstances. Um, but for like tension with my white friends, it wasn't really because I kind of saw it as an opportunity to maybe educate them, and they saw it as that as well. It was more like, okay, what can I do better? What can I know? It was that kind of dynamic with my white friends that was being, I guess, instilled.
So they were welcoming of you adopting the woke ideology. Did you ever feel that they were insincere in the way they received it, or did they were they actually sincere that they wanted you to actually think that way and they wanted you to educate them on these issues?
No, they were sincere in wanting to know more and to do and how to do better. Um, but then again, if I think back, I don't know how to put it, but being my woke self wasn't um, brought up that much with my white friends, just because that's not what we would talk about, you know. So there was not much opportunity for me to bring out that side of myself. But if they did come to me with a certain, you know, question or whatever, then I would, you know, adopt my woke self again, and then I would take the time to maybe educate them or answer their questions, which is something I always did, but once I had the woke mentality instilled, I think I approached it with a bit more aggressivity, excuse me, and a bit more hostility, which didn't cause any tension per se, but it maybe created a bit. It made it a bit awkward at times, because I think I was showing a side of myself that I knew wasn't genuine and might have maybe came across that way when I was speaking.
Mm. So now, did you taking on this ideology, did it sort of coincide with your going to college and
Mm-hmm.
the influences that you had around in college? What was college environment like, and how was it different from the wider Canadian society?
Mm. So yes, so I have to precise that me adopting my woke mindset was really much in college and university, um, because by that time it was trendy. It's what everybody was doing, and so it became normal to kind of tap into that. And also, um, it it exposed me to a whole range of courses that I was really interested in. So I developed an interest in comparative politics, in history, in sociology, anthropology, and so I took these courses, and I was now given an academic woke education in a way. And so it was like very symbiotic for me. I was starting to adopt woke mentality, and I was getting it also from my schooling in a way. And I would write about it and I would research about it, and it would influence everything I would do in that sense. So it was very, like I said, like a symbiotic thing happening. Um, and the second part of your question was how it represented to wider Canadian society. Mhm.
Yes.
Um, I wouldn't know how to answer that, because, like I said, Quebec is a particular context compared to Ontario, for example, where it's very Americanized. We in Quebec we have a lot of American influence, but because of the francophone culture, there is not much space for like racial vocabulary. Everything, every woke concept and stuff was translated and borrowed from the American context and from English. And so when you translate that to French, it doesn't do it justice. Like we don't still we have yet to have the right terms, you know, to communicate in that way.
Mm. And this just highlights America's sort of cultural influence and dominance in the world. And it's one of the reasons why I feel that America is sort of the battleground for ideas, and that it shouldn't fall to bad ideas, because if it does, it has a way of traveling lightning fast to other parts of the world. Because
Mm,
what is sort of accepted in America becomes so easily transported, especially via Hollywood, which is the major means of acculturation of other people to American ideas and ideals. And knowing fully well that the people in entertainment are the most liberal or the woke of the wokes, you understand,
Mhm.
they would readily push that narrative. And even if at times it might not even reflect the realities of wider American society, that's what most people see to be American, you get. And just noting that Canada is right beside the US, and you see that even the racial discourse, the racial environment is quite different. And the part that is much more similar to that's having the same issues with America is the part the most Americanized part of Canada sort of is the one that has those that has taken those proclivities, which also makes me wonder why can't America look at other countries and just borrow from them, borrow some positive
Right,
things from them instead of just
right.
dishing out, dishing out, dishing out. It might do them a world of good to just okay, let's sit down and let's just take from here. I think at
Right.
times it seems as if America is the center of the center of the earth and everything revolves around it.
Yes, I agree with that. And it's also, I think, like, for example, for the Canadian context, a lot of the Black people have migrated from the Caribbean or Africa. So, the Black American experience, although there might be commonalities, it's still very different. And there are many nuances between West Indian contexts and African contexts as well. So it's a bit awkward to, I guess, copy paste what we see in the States to Canada when not everything it's not the same. The historical and sociological contexts are completely different.
So, what are there racialized terms in Canada? Like, how would they refer to uh, people of African descent in Canada? How would they refer to people of European descent in Canada? How would they refer to them?
Hmm. I think the terms white, black, Asian, and such are pretty universal. But from what I hear and from what I've experienced, we usually go by nationality more than race. So someone who's from Africa, we we might say, yeah, he's African, but I think from what I've noticed, we tend to specify where in Africa, or same thing for anywhere in anywhere else in the world. Um, but I mean, yes, there are people who do use like the basic white, black, Asian, etc. Terms, but yeah, like I said, from what I've experienced, we go based by nationality more than racial terms.
Yeah, that's interesting. So let's get back to the work stuff, which is the
Yes.
meat of the conversation today. Now, you said you started taking courses that sort of reinforced those ideas. Now,
Mhm.
those courses that you started taking, were they were they part of your initial course that you wanted to do, or did they come after you became much more woke and you wanted to really know about the stuff and you just put in your energy and you shelved some other things and decided to focus on those areas? Was that what happened?
So actually, the discovery of woke mentality and the adoption of woke mentality influenced my choice of program once I went to university. So I started to tap in more into like colonial histories and such, and it really sparked an interest in political science and international development. And so that's what I studied in university. That's what I did my bachelor's in. And so with those two disciplines, there's a lot of courses where you explore these kinds of themes, especially for international development, which studies, I guess, the relation between the West and the rest, right? And so I got really interested into finding out more about colonial history, whether it was through a political lens, anthropological lens, excuse me, or philosophical. And so I really chose my courses in function of that.
So, where do you think is the place of history in today's world? I mean, should we just forget about what happened in the past, or should we learn about them But having that knowledge, what do we do with it? What do you think should be sort of the synthesis between knowing what happened in the past and what to do with that knowledge?
I'm I'm still trying to figure that out right now. I'm in the process of figuring that out right now. For the most part, we I think we don't interpret history properly, in the sense that we take it very, very personally, and we tend to project historical context to the present. I believe history needs to be taught and learned and known about. Like, we need to know our history to acknowledge the past always, to better understand why we are where we are. But at the same time, I think we need to look at history as just sequence of human life. And so naturally it's going to be flawed. Naturally there are going to be issues along the way, but our role is not to judge, but just to understand and take it as it is. I think we need to find a better balance between, objectivity and subjectivity when it comes to history. Um, that's my take on it right now. I might change my mind because I'm still in the process of developing, I think, my relationship to history. But for the most part, that's what I think.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think I would agree with that sentiment, especially with the way you talked about it being sort of a human being. If we're going to look at it in terms of, say, history is a human being from being an infant, being a newborn
Mm-hmm.
to an old man, you see that the process of that individual moving from here to here is a process of change. There are some things that you did as a child, there's some things that appealed to you as a child, but then as you grew older, your priorities began to change, your outlook in life began to change. And that's the same way I see human history. I mean, for the most of history, human society was really pretty messed up. But
Mm-hmm.
gradually we become much more civilized all over the world, and people are aware that, okay, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we shouldn't fish fish and kill all the whales in the sea. Maybe we shouldn't kill all the lions in Africa. Maybe we need to conserve this. Maybe we shouldn't do this. You understand? So I think we should, even though we know this terrible history, I think we should also give credence to ourselves for how far we've come, because where we're coming from was a very dark place, and we've sort of progressed. And with history, personally, I love history. I love to read about peoples. I love to read about culture. That is the I just love reading about people and culture. When I was in it always fascinates me to learn about different cultures, different people. What are their peculiarities? What are the similarities? So it gives you a broader view of understanding. Um, it gives you a broader view of understanding the way the world works. There's a question here by someone. It says, um, "How do you both feel about Jewish people being called white?" Do you think we should get into this now or continue conversation first?
I mean, I don't know if I have the right knowledge to answer that question. I mean, I don't know how to answer that question, to be quite honest. I wouldn't know. Because it
Okay.
is true that, because it is weird to conflate religious belief with race, and that's what we tend to do when we talk about Jewish people. But at the same time, I think some people argue that you being Jewish comes with a whole like cultural baggage that might be, I guess, adequate to refer to them as a race, but I'm not sure.
But this is where the problem of race comes in. Racial categorizations comes in. What is race? Is it just the skin color, or is it skin color plus certain social norms or certain cultural affiliations? Because if you wanted to go by the basis of just say plain, just simple skin color, then
Hmm.
you might want to say that the Jews are white. You understand? But we do understand that there are much more. There are certain other aspects that may factor into what would classify someone as being white or not being white. So it's sort of tricky, the classifications, that what's used to determine what a race is. It's so nebulous, and that's why it doesn't make any sense.
Hmm.
But if I wanted to be very literal, if I wanted to say, okay, I wanted to say race is purely based on the color of your skin, I would be tempted to say, yeah, the Jews are white because they have light skin and most of them have straight hair, and a lot of them have actually have European DNA from
Mm.
their diaspora. You understand? In fact, the and another thing is that even the Jews, they're not a monolithic people. You understand? Though they sort of take on the features of the people that they're living around at that particular time. The Jews from Europe do typically look European. You understand? The
Mhm.
Jews from, say, the ones that live in the Middle East will typically take on more Middle Eastern features. Even the Jews, the Ethiopian Jews, you understand?
Right.
We just mentioned it.
Yeah.
The Ethiopian Jews, they're like Ethiopians. They have much darker skin. You understand? Even
Mhm.
though genetically speaking, they still have Jewish DNA. You understand? So what is race in that sense? If a race, if the Jewish people can be as light as Germans and can be as dark as Ethiopians, then
Mhm.
what's the concept of race? You understand? So it makes a mess of things, and that's why I think that Dr. Mason's theory of racelessness makes a lot of sense because we
Absolutely.
can we can easily we can easily fall back to ethnicity. We can easily fall back to um, culture. You understand? Where are you? Like in my country, we ask this question a lot. Where are you from?
Mm.
And I get that in the West, that question is sort of offensive to certain people. You understand? But after meeting in the second thing you say to a Nigerian when you meet them is, where are you from?
Mm.
And why we do that is we're trying to get a sense of who you are. You
Right.
understand?
Right.
What are your cultural peculiarities? Oh, I'm from this part of the country, I'm from this state, I'm from that. Or people now understand, oh, this is who this person is. You understand? Okay, maybe this is how I deal with this person. But when you just say, okay, you're white, you're black, it doesn't tell you anything about the person. It doesn't, apart from just being descriptive, it doesn't tell you anything.
No, I agree. And you mentioned really quickly, for other people, asking where you're from is offensive. I actually welcome that question. I love talking about where people are from. And when someone asks me, I tell them, well, I'm from Montreal. And then when they're curious about my heritage, I explain it to them. But I think, asking someone where you're from is, like you said, an important way of figuring out, what that person, who that person is and what they're about a bit.
Yeah, yeah. Which I think is something that we should promote more. I
I
mean,
think so too.
I and there's this statement that I knew growing up which says that there is diversity is the beauty of life. I can't remember the exact, but there's beauty in diversity. You
Mhm.
understand? And today it seems that diversity, probably of thoughts, is no longer appreciated. You understand?
Mm.
People want to streamline thought to be very, very narrow. You have to be able to see it in a very specific way. If you don't see it in a very specific way, then it becomes problematic. But that shouldn't be the case, you understand? Every human is just as diverse. I mean, myself, I'm different from my siblings, even though we grew up in the same environment, but we have different peculiarities. And so it will make more sense to even treat people on an individual basis than on a racial basis because the individual basis it tells you so much about the person. On the racial basis it tells you little to nothing aside the fact that this person has more melanin than the other person. You
Exactly.
understand?
Exactly. Exactly.
Which also is, nobody chooses where we're going to come from. Nobody chooses their ancestry. There's so many things that we're just born with and we have to live with it. You understand?
Mhm.
So having to judge someone based on that, based on something that they could never do anything about, it just shows how sort of regressive we're becoming as human society, if I would say so, because we've made a lot of progress in a couple of years, and it seems as if there's this regression towards infantilism, and I don't know, It's not a good one. It's what we're talking about is the woke. It's the sort of the woke, which is which is supposed to have been a good thing in the sense that you are much more aware of injustices. You care about what other people are going through. You empathize with them, and you want to improve conditions for them. You get, but then, which is a problem with all movements, as I would say, they eventually get corrupted along the way. I mean,
Yeah.
either they lose sight of their original goal or the original purpose, or at times they've already achieved their goal, and in order to sustain their existence, they have to invent problems just to stay relevant.
Yes, and I think that second part, inventing problems to stay relevant, is a huge issue, and I think is what I would say is what's happening with the woke movement right now. We're really drudging up like intense, terrible things that happened so long ago and try to make them relevant to this day, and it's creating more division and more than anything, more than unity. And it's like I feel like embracing unity now for woke people is like the most terrible thing to do. They really want to, it's like they're going back to a certain kind of segregation and making it noble this time because it's like affirming your place in the world and stuff, but it's like doing the absolute opposite.
Yeah, I mean, why would we want to go back to a system was that was bad for people? You understand? Why would we want to even conceive that there is any benefit to that system?
Mm.
Supposing the world truly becomes balkanized along racial lines, along color lines, along gender lines, along religious lines, it would be terrible. You understand? But when we can put our common humanity first, then every other thing becomes secondary. You know, when I interact with people, I give them the benefit of the doubt. I see them as an individual, and I
Same.
respect them as an individual. You understand?
Mhm. Of
And
course.
yeah, and this might be naive. I also believe them until they give me a reason not to. You understand? So
Me too.
I
Yeah, yeah,
approach, yeah. So that's the way I approach life. So give everybody the full benefits of what I would say, okay, this is the way I would act in this particular situation. So I am giving you that full benefit. So my further interactions with you will depend on how well you've met up with that. If I
yeah. Hmm.
see that, okay, you're not meeting up, then I have to cut some things off. You understand? Then I
Absolutely.
know, okay, this person is not trustworthy, or this person is trustworthy, and I can continue dealing with them in that manner.
I do the same. I do the same. But I'm like on a practical level, there's no doubt about that. That's how I act. But I'm in like the process right now, and so I'd be curious to know your thoughts on this. I'm in the process right now in of reconciling where I am today, perspective wise and stuff, and kind of I trying to rebuild my relationship to the past knowledge that I've acquired when I was in the woke mentality. So I kind of don't know how to relate to that part of myself, and I guess I don't know how to relate to, I guess, certain historical events that back then I would have completely attributed to, you know, the to racism and the atrocities of colonialism, and then today I could acknowledge that, but I don't know, I feel kind of naive to say, well, that's history and now we know better. How, was my question clear, my comment clear? How would you, do you have a similar problem, or how would you relate to such an issue?
Can you repeat that? You sort of
Yes,
cut
of
out a bit.
course. Sorry. So I'm in the process of reconciling where I'm at today with, I guess, my past self and the knowledge that I've acquired along the way. And I'm trying to, in reconstructing my relationship to history, I'm trying to, I guess, acknowledge the past for the past, but also at the same time recognize the atrocities that happened without, implicating such a personal aspect to it. I don't know if you had any comments or ideas.
Yeah, I think, reading history, seeing certain injustices, it can hit you because you're human. And especially when you can relate somewhat to those people who were at the brunt of that. thing. And in one of my videos where I admitted that Roots, I don't know if you've read this book Roots or you've seen the movie by
No,
Alex
I've
Haley.
pushed it. I've
Roots.
postponed it as much as I could. I don't know if I'm ready to watch
Okay.
that.
Now, Roots, I read Roots when I was about 11, 12 years old. And
Hmm.
because I loved reading then, so I read novels, books, everything. And it's actually it was my aunt's book. My mother's elder sister, she is biracial too, but
Okay.
I didn't meet her. I only met her when I was a baby, so I didn't. But her books, some of her books were still with my mom, and I
Hmm.
saw Roots and I read it. And I, by the time I was done reading Roots, I was so angry at the white man. I was so angry at Caucasians, and specifically, I was angry at the British. And
Yeah.
for a very long time, I was specifically angry with the British because I
Hmm.
thought that okay, these were the guys that partly colonized my country and they were involved in so many of this uh,
Right.
bullshit with transatlantic slave trade. So I fantasized so much. One of my greatest fantasies was making white people, specifically British people, go through what they made African people go through.
Mm.
I envisaged a situation where Africans will conquer Britain and then make all of them slaves. And,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
I mean, I had that, you understand? Even though my current reality, I didn't see all those oppression, I didn't see all those terrible things that were done in history. But for the fact that I had read it and I sort of put myself in it, I empathized with it, it just became a source of source of pain for me and a source of anger for me, which I did cure myself of because I would say that I have the ability to think things through and rationalize myself out of any bad behavior or bad thoughts. So as I grew older, I began to see the world in a much more nuanced way, and I was like, okay,
yeah.
well, um, people who did this thing were terrible, horrible human beings. We can acknowledge that. Now, I'm a Christian, and the Bible says that the son will not pay for the sins of the father, neither will the father pay for the sins of the son. Everybody is going to take their own cross. You understand?
Mhm.
So and the Bible also says that he will punish sinners, their generation up to certain. We say, but those who continue in the ways of their father, you understand. So if white people today had continued in that sense in what their ancestors were doing, then it will I'll feel justified in feeling that way. You understand? But
Yeah.
I think that they have come a long way and they've done a lot of restitution. They've done a lot of there's a lot of progress that has been made in that instance. So I see no reason why I should hold that grudge anymore, or
Mm.
why I should even be incensed by that. Where what I do now is I just take you based on you as a person. You understand? You're a person. I'm a person. I'm going to deal with you that way. If you give me crap, I will give you crap. It doesn't
Right.
matter who you are. You understand? If you
Right.
give me good vibes, I'll give you good vibes, whether you look like me or not. You understand? So
Yes.
that is sort of the philosophy that I'm just running with.
Yes. I appreciate that a lot because I was trying to write an article for Substack actually on a book called Discourse on Colonialism by Aimé Césaire. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. And I read that book for school when I was very much into the woke mentality. And when I read the book, it was a revelation to me. And similarly to you, it really fueled my grudge, towards the terrible white European man, right? And I reread it this week just to see where I was at with that book. And I didn't agree. Like I saw all the notes I had written in my margins from back then when I read it, and I didn't agree with anything I wrote. And I had a weird. It was like I felt the complete opposite than back then. And I wanted to write an article on how to reconcile those two parts of myself, but it was just so difficult because I felt that my position right now was being naive, and I felt like I was choosing ignorance, which is ridiculous considering all that I know now. And so I was in this weird dilemma of just, trying to, accept history for what it was, and versus, I guess, taking it so personally and begrudgingly I guess, acting out that angst towards other people. But no, thanks for that. It was a good insight. Good insight for sure.
Yeah. So what cured you of this? What made you awakened? I hope that word awakened doesn't become corrupted to like what became
It
what.
might. Um, what awakened me? I I didn't like who I was being. That's what, like, that was the biggest thing for me. I recognized that I was being way too hostile and aggressive, and it went against who I actually am deep down. I'm an empathetic person and I give the benefit of the doubt always. And so being woke was forcing me to go against my nature in a way. And I started having a lot of questions. And I was noticing inconsistencies in certain arguments. And when those questions could not be answered, I was like, okay, this means there's something fishy around here. And so it was a long process and I'm still in the midst of it now, but I was like, this is finished. I'm done with this. I dropped it and I felt better. And then I did research and I kind of treated my mind like a blank slate and didn't take anything for granted or anything, as fact, and just welcomed nuance and then welcomed uh, the questions that I had. And so this is the attitude that I have right now. And yeah, I'm no longer interested in any sort of woke mindset behavior at all.
Well, that's a very good because like Christina Bang commented here, she said maturity. That's what happened,
Thank
and
you.
considering that I would say you're young, um, for you to have gone through that process and then you were able to bring yourself out of it. You were able to see and say, well, I don't like the person that I'm becoming. And then you were able to ask critical questions and you were not getting the answers. You understand? You were not getting satisfactory answers. You were seeing answers that were dishonest and you're like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. You understand? Which a lot of people don't do. People are much more ideologically possessed. Like me, I am not. I don't sit. I don't sit in one. Okay, we're back. I think we cut
Okay,
off a
yeah, it
little
glitched a
bit.
bit. Okay,
I
so
don't sit in. Yeah, yeah, we're back again.
mhm.
I don't sit in one ideological position and say, you know what, I've dug my trench here. I'm going to die here. Nothing's going to change my mind. You understand? No, I look at the merit of the argument that is placed before me, and if it makes any sense, and if there's evidence for it, then I'm very, very open to changing my mind on it. You understand? But don't bullshit me with emotions or
Mm-mm.
um, things that you cannot substantially verify. You understand? Things that there is no evidence for. You're just drumming up emotions so that people can say. Um, so that so that people can say that you are a good person. You understand? Being a good person shouldn't just be you agreeing that people are oppressed.
Mm.
People are oppressed, and we have to do something about it. Yeah, people are oppressed. But at times, even those who cry the most that people are oppressed, in their trying to rectify oppression, you are now justifying the oppression of other people. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't make any sense. You can't cure one bad take with another bad take. You understand? It is famously always said that two um, two wrongs do not make a right. You
Mm-hmm.
understand? So
Mm-hmm.
you can't cure something that is bad with something else that is bad. You have to look for something positive. So in the desire to help people, don't put down other people. You can't. If someone is here, you can bring other people up to that point, but don't say no. I have to bring this person down to meet up to the person at the bottom, because what you're doing is that you are for the whole of humanity, you're dragging humanity back
Mm-hmm.
instead of pushing it forward. And we don't want to bring people down. We want to uplift people, which should be the case. So it
Yeah.
shouldn't be the case that someone's wealth is a threat. No, it should be an inspiration. We'll look at this person. This person is doing so well. How can we make other people do so just as well? Not that this person is doing so well, that means he must be robbing society. That means he must be doing something
Mm,
terrible. How do we destroy him?
agreed. Agree with everything for sure.
Yeah, so I usually like opening up the stream at about 1 hour mark for other people to call in. I hope you don't mind. I have a few people
No,
that might
it's
want to
not.
call in. So
Sure.
let me let me post the invite link in the chat so people can call in. Ogie is a Nigerian, but is in Canada, so
Oh,
he can
nice.
relate, and
Yeah.
I believe he would want to talk to Steve, Steve,
Mm-hmm.
and all the other guys that we roll with. So, guys, um, call in. The link is in the chat, so you can call in. Let's talk. Let's interact with Violette. Um, so, that's your name. Your name Simard. That's your surname, right?
Yes, my last name. Yeah.
Your last name. Is that French or is that Lebanese?
Oh, it's French. It's French. Simard. Yeah.
Oh, pronounce it
Simard.
Simon.
Yeah.
Yeah, they say French is a very romantic language, but I tend
Oh,
to disagree. I think Spanish is much more romantic than
I
French.
think so too. Oh, Steve is in the chat now.
Yeah, yeah. Steve is in the chat. Steve, welcome to the chat. So jump right in.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Violette, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Sorry, I had to mess with you, Charles. You know I love you.
Yeah, I do.
No, Violet, I don't think there's anything that you need to reconcile.
Mm,
I think you've already done it. The best way to reconcile past mistakes is to ensure that they never happen again. And I would suggest you look at it in that way. Is that you've already done the work. You're already there. There's nothing to reconcile. I mean, if you have feelings of guilt, okay, well, let's address that. But I really don't think you need to. I think you're already there.
wow. Thank you. Yeah, I haven't considered that at all. I always tend to want to find a balance between like I guess the two extremes I sometimes explore, but sometimes I forget that it's not always possible. But so yeah, no, thank you for that. That's true.
Yeah, and I agree too. Like I said earlier, for you to have come to this point, to this place where you were able to bring yourself back to to be able to bring yourself back to still in quote sanity.
Mm,
It shows that the basic ingredients for not messing up ever again is there. You understand? It means you're aware to the extent to which you can go, and you're aware that you can bring yourself back because you understand certain things. You can reason them out. You can ask the tough questions. You can ask the right questions, and you can listen for the answers. You understand?
mhm,
So if the answer is not making any sense, then you can simply pull yourself out of that situation. I mean, you said that what you were going through was sort of there was a conflict, there was internal conflict between the ideas that you were adopting and how you actually felt as a human being. So
mhm,
when that conflict begins to come in, some people will just fall into it and be like, you know what, I need to do more of this stuff for me to feel better. And they just get deeper and deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. While others like yourself, just pull yourself out and be like,
mm.
and it's something I really admire. I mean, for you to have been able to do that, it's phenomenal, and I
Thank
just
you.
hope and wish that more people would do something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk about your writing. What got you interested in writing?
Yes, so writing that was a long process. I always enjoyed like my creative writing assignments in school. I always enjoyed doing my research papers and stuff. And so I just decided to write for fun now and write about what I like writing. Um, and not be afraid to share my opinions that sometimes go against or most times go against I guess the mainstream. And so I created my substack publication for that, for me to have the freedom to write any way and anyhow and about anything that I want. So I created Candid, which you could find on Substack, candidthoughts.substack.com. I can maybe put a link at some point. And I
Yeah,
write,
you can.
I share my opinions on culture, race and identity, history, literature, music, cinema, all that good stuff. And I post, sorry, I post articles every Saturday at noon. And so, yeah.
Oh, every Saturday at noon in Substack.
Yes, like clockwork.
That's impressive. I wish I could get that level of dedication, and I wish I was that precise. I mean, I'm always, I'm always, you know, I do write on Substack too, and I wanted to make it a weekly thing, but
Mhm.
I had to just okay, you know what? I'll do it every other week.
Right, right, right,
I'll
right.
do it every other week because uh, I can't keep up with the weekly. I could, but I don't know if I have the discipline to. I don't think I have the discipline to.
To
I
do it
could, but
as a
I mean, I
weekly.
could write. Writing comes easy to me,
Mhm.
but I procrastinate a lot, so that's one of my big problems. So I wish I would be able to cure that. If not, I'll be dropping articles every week. But every other week, I do write something. I try to be consistent with that, and
Nice.
it gives me, much more time to. No matter how I procrastinate, within 2 weeks I'll get something out.
You get it done.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So um, what were your most significant influences in terms of books that shaped your worldview, either when you were being woke or when you withdrew from that? What were those books that shaped your worldview?
I think, well, Discourse on Colonialism by Aimé Césaire, for sure, was an important one, as well as Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon. Um, Also, the biography of Malcolm X by Manning Marable was very important to me. Um, and then most recently, I read The Content of Her Character by Shelby Steele. And so I would say like those are like maybe my top four books that really shape my worldview. And I'm working on building my library more and more, on discovering more literature on the subject. I have a whole list that I need to get to very soon.
Wow, that's good. That's good. I think those are good books. And the one that just struck at me was The Context of Our Character by Shelby Steele. I haven't read it, but I do like Shelby Steele a lot. So when I hear his name next to a book, I know it's going to be something good. And
I
I
strongly
would
recommend it.
I would I would try and read it. I would read it sometime. So now for Malcolm X, for Malcolm X,
Mhm.
what are your general impressions of him?
What I really appreciated about Malcolm X was that in him I saw an evolution. He didn't just stick to one one way of seeing things. He really grew. So for example, he started with the Nation of Islam, then realized how corrupt that organization was, and then went off on his own. And even after his pilgrimage to Mecca, he came back like a changed man, and he embraced, I guess, more of an empathetic, I guess, point of view compared to like the very aggressive and violent one in the beginning. So that's what I appreciated in reading about Malcolm X, is the evolution of his character, and he didn't just stick to one thing. He really encouraged, I guess, a certain transformation. But what a lot of people know about him is like maybe the first phase of Malcolm X and not the rest. But yes, I encourage people to really do more research on him because he's very an interesting character.
Yeah, that's that's the whole point of being human.
Hmm.
We grow, you
Right.
understand? And if we don't grow, then we were never alive in the first place, because growth is a natural process of what it means to be alive. And your ideas have to evolve, and
Hmm.
they have to evolve to be better. And
Yeah.
they might be rudimentary at first, but then as you gain more experience, and it just starts to, okay, Trey is asking,
What does woke mean?
what does woke mean? We don't discuss the stuff in the book. Okay, Violette, can
Oh my
you
god.
can you just explain briefly
What
what
does
woke
woke
means?
mean? Let's see. So being woke in my words is oh, Charles, I think I'm gonna need your help for this because I don't know. I know it, but I don't know how to put the words to it. Being woke is being extra conscious about social issues around you, and where it becomes bad is that all you do is view the world in very strict ways of being. I don't know if I'm even making sense. Trey, please let me know. I wouldn't know how to explain it. Anybody help me out, please?
Okay, so I think you're making sense, because in the literal sense, being woke would mean to be aware of social
Right.
injustices and to want to do something about it. But the thing about words and the thing about concepts is that they evolve as well. You understand? So what's the aboriginal meaning? The aboriginal meaning might be different from what it means currently. You understand? So in that sense, I think even though the word woke has taken a much more sinister umbrella, in the sense that people have taken it too far. You understand? We do get that there are injustices, but to make it, to see the world through, sort of a Marxist view of oppressor versus oppressed,
Mhm.
um, you know, slave versus master. You understand? The world is much more nuanced than that. You understand? There are so many factors that come into play, that interact with each other to produce what the world is. So to just make it a binary of, once this person is this way, it therefore means another person has caused it to be that way. But it may be true that someone else is to an extent responsible, but it's not true that it's that factor alone. There might be multiple factors, and at times I usually like using this analogy in physics, where um, you know you have a certain body that is acted upon by different forces. Maybe there's a 2 Newton force, there's a 5 Newton force, there's a 10 Newton force, and they're acting on that body in different directions. Now, the body is not going to move in one particular direction. It's going to move in the direction that is in the resultant of the resolution of the forces. You understand? So, in that sense, whatever outcomes people are having, maybe racism might be one of it, maybe sexism might even be one of it, but there are other factors as well that we should try to factor into the conversation. We should try to impute into the equation to give us a much more balanced view, rather than just assuming that everything is due to this. So in that sense, that's where the problem with woke comes, where they have taken it to such a binary level.
Mhm.
Yes, there are injustices, but are these injustices solely due to discrimination, for example? It might not be true. It might not be solely due to discrimination. There might be other factors, like Thomas Sowell would say that disparity doesn't always mean discrimination. But in the oh, we have someone else there, woke Christian. Uh,
Oh, hey,
hey,
how are y'all?
Hi, how are you?
we're good.
Quite well.
Welcome
I
to
feel
the
like I hear your
conversation.
voices
How are you doing?
behind me. Hold on one second.
Okay.
There we go. I'm sorry. I was listening to it as well as jumping into the StreamYard. How are you all doing?
Good, how are you?
Oh, we're
Quite
doing good.
well,
We're
quite
doing
well.
good.
So I wanted to jump in because the question was, what is woke? And I don't know. I think I might have talked about it a time or two, hence why I'm Dear Woke Christian, the
Go ahead.
podcast. So the notion of being woke used to mean that you were aware of what's going on in society. So for example, hey, I'm woke to the idea that Charles is trying to scam me in 3 Card Monte on the street corner, man, I already know what he's about. I know he's trying to scam me or whatever. But later on, it started to morph into this idea of being Black conscious. So, for example, this is where the Black spirituality and other ideologies started to take root in our culture and such like that. Like, oh, I'm woke because I know that uh, Christianity is the white man's religion or something of that nature. Doesn't have to be true. That's just how it plays out. And so now woke just kind of means anything. I mean, it's just a cadre of just about anything you can throw at it from I'm woke. I mean, anything. And most of the time it's around race and all of the critical race theory ideas that have kind of morphed in and kind of come in. I speak predominantly about how critical race theory and wokeism affects the church, the Christian church. So I discuss how critical race theory has brought in all these different ideas and such like that of being woke and that. So I just thought I would jump in and if I could help out with that, because I saw you, Violet, you're like, man, I need a little bit of help in this.
Thank
And
you. But yes, sorry, I'm seeing like Trey's comments. So yes, like the whole BLM thing around George Floyd and Breonna Taylor are considered like woke activism.
correct. Now, maybe there was something that was maybe there was some injustices that were done. Maybe there were some things that were truly wrong. And sadly, we'll never hear about those because the wokeism aspect of it overshadows anything that could have been like, oh, maybe, yeah, that was something bad and that was something wrong. Well, they've added all these extras to it now. So now people don't even, now they don't almost shelf it. They put it on the shelf like, oh, that's just woke or that's just a racial issue when it could have been something else. Charles was talking about we can't be binary. We can't just say that everything is one thing. There are other factors that play in a part. Well, with woke ideology, you don't consider those other parts. You don't consider the fact that Charles was scamming Jason. That's why Jason and Charles started into a fight. Well, no, it's because Jason is a lighter complexion than Charles, or Jason is American and Jason, or whatever other woke factors play a part into it, rather than probably what really was the case of. And by the way, Charles, I don't think you were scamming me at all. I'm just busting your chops. But so that's but
Yeah, that's some good natured humor. Yeah, humor is
oh,
needed.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Hey, not a problem at all.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for
Thank you.
having me on.
Yeah,
Take care,
yeah, we
everybody.
really appreciate that. Yeah, yeah, thanks. So, Trey, I think we should let's address some other things that Trey is saying here.
Mhm.
He's saying about George Floyd. He said for they killed him for being black, though. Isn't that something we as black people should be outraged about? I heard about it in the news. So, how would you respond to Trey?
So yes, Trey, you're referring to the police violence that happened, like the police brutality that George Floyd and Breonna Taylor suffered. And yes, that is something we should be outraged because it's never right to kill anybody. Um, where the woke thing comes in is that if we're so okay, so the strictly definitional thing of woke is yes, being aware that there is police violence that happens against Black people. Where the woke narrative takes it too far, though, is by claiming that every single policeman is out to get every single Black person on Earth or in America, and then we should abolish and defund and destroy the police. So that is something that the woke might take to the extreme, and that is what we are fighting against or speaking out against, because nuance is always necessary, and we always need to look at things critically. So I don't know if I'm answering your comment or / your question, but yes, if you look at cases of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, the protests that surrounded those events by BLM and stuff is what we would call woke activism.
Mm. Okay, so I will just comment on this by saying, what happened to George Floyd, because that's the one I'm most familiar with, was a horrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it shouldn't have to happen to anybody. You understand? When I watched it, I was bitter. I was angry. I was pissed that um, this this man was being treated in that manner, in that way. But the first thing that occurred to me wasn't that a white person was killing a black person. What I saw was that a person in position of authority was misusing his power, was abusing his power. And maybe it's because of where I come from, maybe because I have seen that play over and over again in my country where the people are of the same race, you understand? I have seen police, misuse their power. I've seen police brutalize people, you understand, that were not deserving of it. So, in that sense, if it was in my country, would I say, uh, obviously, it can be a racial issue. So, it exists that police can actually abuse their power without in outside the racial context. So now, how do we know that this cop wasn't just a shitty cop? How do we know that he didn't just have a terrible argument with his wife and he wanted to take out his anger on someone? How do we know that so many other things might not have been responsible for his behavior at that point in time? How do we know specifically that he did that because this person was black? Those are the questions that we should ask ourselves. So if our first instinct is to say that it is because of his race, then you ask, what is your evidence for that? You understand? Because it is true that there are racist cops. It is true that there are racist people. You understand? But because life is much more nuanced, you can't just say that this happened because of racism. You have to, okay, tell us why. Why do you think you feel this is a racist incident? I mean, there's this other Tony Timpa. There's this other guy, this other white guy called Tony Timpa, who was killed in exactly the same manner that George Floyd was killed. You understand? He's a white guy. I think he was behaving erratically too. They called the police, and the police came and they knelt on his back too. And this guy passed out. And you know what the cops were doing? They were laughing. They were laughing at him. He passed out, they were laughing at him. And when the paramedics came and discovered that he was dead, the kind of look the paramedics gave them was like, you idiots. You understand? So, in that sense, they also killed that white man. And did they kill him because he was white? No. They were just shitty cops. They were bad cops. They were people who were abusing their authority. You understand? So, if Tony Timpa had been black, could we also say that he was killed just because he was black? Well, he's white, or he was white. He was killed in almost the same way that George Floyd was killed. So the problem really, to me, isn't so much of a racial problem as much as it is the problem of abuse of authority. You understand? So when people are rallying against the police and saying, defund the police and all that, I think that there is actually genuine reason for reform to happen in the police force. You understand? But taking it in the racial slant is where the problem comes in, because after all, black people also need the police as well to protect them. You understand? So if you want to say, oh, defund the police, abolish the police, what happens to black people as well who are living in communities where they need the police to protect them? What happens to white people? Are the police only going to be serving white people? No, they're going to be serving everybody. So it would make sense that the issues with the police are addressed. Why are they behaving in this manner? Why are they abusing their authority? Is it that they're not properly trained? Is it that they're not psychologically balanced? What exactly is the issue? You understand? Those issues, the roots of the issue should be gotten to, not just, saying, because when you say it's racism, you shut down the conversation. Where do you go from there? Where do you go from there? It's racism, so you can't sort of cure someone of their racism. It's something that they believe, it's something that they feel, it's something that they think, you understand. Where do you go from there? So that's my sense of the whole George Floyd issue. I didn't see it as much as a race thing, as much as I saw it as, one person abusing one man, killing another man.
I just want to take the time to address a few of Trey's comments as well, because he spoke about seeing stats in the news. Be careful of what you see on TV, and especially the news, because what they show you is it's crafted and it's calculated. and they're showing it to you on purpose. When you said you see a lot of people, a lot of cops killing young black men in particular, young black people. Yes, it is true, but the way they talk about it in the news is very tricky, and I believe they do it in a way to make us believe that we're in a place of victimhood and that we're still being oppressed when it's not actually the case. So just take what you see, question everything and take what you see in the news with a grain of salt, because it's not always honest, right? And it's there for a purpose, and question that purpose, right? I think the narrative of Black people being hunted down by the police is one that's very dangerous and that shouldn't be propagated the way it is right now. So just watch what you consume.
And I think this is one of the sort of critique of unbridled capitalism. You understand? I am for capitalism, but I do know that it has its flaws.
Mm-hmm.
Because news agencies are businesses
Mm-hmm.
and they want to sell the products. And frankly, good news doesn't sell. I mean, just regular stuff doesn't sell. What sells is controversy. They want the viewership so they can sell adverts, so they can sell ads. So because of that, they are now engaged in sensationalism, such that they can take something that is basically true, build sensationalist things around it, and just feed it out to the public, and don't care, you know, they don't care what impact it will have in the wider population, because what they want is the clicks, what they want is the views.
Mhm.
And if being outraged, and humans somehow, we are very simple beings, we are very simple creatures, you understand.
We're
Most of
easy
the
to
time
trick.
is it what?
We're easy to trick and convince.
Yes, 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 yes. So when we see something that, we see something interesting, we just want to click on it. But people don't, especially now, people don't want to be bored anymore. It
Mm.
seems as if being bored is a problem. If you're bored, then no, 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 something is off. Everybody wants to get their dopamine fix. We're all addicts currently. We're all addicts to the next, and we're being desensitized. Like addicts, you need a bigger dose, a bigger dose all the time. You understand, to get that emotional satisfaction, and that's what media is doing. They're just feeding into that human nature of wanting to find the next controversial thing, because once it's controversial, it's interesting, and by so doing, they're destroying society for profit. So it's all profit driven. Nobody is telling news anymore. It's all about opinion. And it's a problem I find with both conservative news media and liberal news media. And it's one of the reasons why I don't watch Fox. I don't watch Fox. Even if I'm going to agree with them more than I would agree with CNN. I'd prefer to even watch CNN. I know that these people, they are telling me rubbish. Let me
Mm.
just watch it. You understand? I don't
Yeah.
want to go to Fox where, yes, I agree with what you're saying, but what's your agenda? What's the agenda behind it? Are you telling me this because, it's obviously true, or you're still trying to push a narrative? So they're all trying to push a narrative, you understand?
Mhm.
And it's not good for society. So we should always take what we see from the media with a pinch of salt. And it's true.
Agreed. I stopped watching the news altogether just because of that. Trey is asking a lot of interesting questions. I don't know if you want to tap into
Yeah.
that.
So he also said, I also see a lot of Trump supporters being against BLM and black protests. Why is this? You have an opinion on that?
Um, I think we forget that people who support certain politicians are still people and have their own personal beliefs. It's not because they support a certain person that naturally they're anti or pro something else. So the reason why a lot of Trump supporters are against BLM and black protests, um, well, the BLM part might be because they might be aware of how corrupt that organization might be. Do your own research. I'm not going to push any of my opinions. But some people might just not be educated on the topic. So asking why a group of people behave or think a certain way is, I think we have to remember it's also down to the individual. So a person might just not believe in these things, and that's also okay. We have to remember that as well.
Yeah,
Well,
to me,
yeah.
I think it's a mix of things. One, it might be perception.
Mm-hmm.
It might also be ignorance. You understand? Because when BLM say, okay, we're fighting for this, a person that goes against BLM can either go against them on the principle of understanding exactly, you know, why this organization is bad, or they could go on, I feel attacked by what these people are saying. And I think there are a lot of people who are against BLM, not because they even understand the ideology, but just because they feel attacked by, which I think is not a good thing to go off by. You understand? You shouldn't see it as a personal thing. If you're against BLM, there has to be a very specific, as in you have to be able to articulate, okay, these are the reasons, not because I'm white and I feel this is attack on whiteness, you
Mm.
understand? Or not because I feel they are saying we're racist. It might just be that BLM is saying that, look, there's an issue here, you understand? Black men are just, they're being, one black death, or one death, one unjustified death is one death too many, you understand? So if people are saying this person did not deserve to die, we need to look into it. I don't think it's appropriate for us to say you're attacking, you're attacking, you're attacking. But then I have my own issues with BLM on the other hand. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
You know, with the way the organization is set up and with the corruption and all that, and with the framing. You understand? If they came out and said, you know what, this happened to black people. We don't want it to happen. It's a bad thing. You understand? We want justice for this. You understand? I'll be behind them. You understand? But when they frame it as black people are being haunted and there's really no evidence for that, then it begins to, I begin to get weary about what their what their what their goals are or what their
Mm-hmm.
motivations are, because I don't want to be deceived. I want it to be shown plainly. Yes, what happened to these people are terrible. We demand justice, and justice should be served. You understand? If there wasn't going to be was there going to be a miscarriage of justice, people can advocate for those things. You understand? But don't make it seem like because of this one incident, which is truly horrendous, then you just say, "Oh, black people are unsafe. They are being haunted." Yeah, I mean, that rhetoric just it's to me it's not correct. So that would be my issue with the movement. All right, I think Violette is taking a minute.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
no problem. So, guys, anyone wants to call in again? Let me put the invite link on the chat so you can call in. Let's talk. Let's talk. And Trey is asking some very interesting questions. Let me read another of his question and see if I can answer something from it. Okay, he said, Mike the Dad Crosby. I don't know about all of that. I don't see Trump supporters like you care about Floyd. I've seen many call him a drug addict, etc. It's racist because he's black. Now I can comment on this. You know, you know, I think it's bad faith for you to take the history of somebody, whether a criminal or not, and then use it to justify the terrible thing that happened to them that wasn't directly related to, you know, to their history. You understand? If George Floyd was a drug addict, good and fine. But did he die because of his drug addiction? or did he die because of the way that policeman treated him at that point in time? It doesn't matter whether he was a criminal in the past, it doesn't matter whether he was a criminal yesterday. If he is stopped today by the police and is killed, not for that crime, unjustly killed, it doesn't matter that he was a criminal yesterday. You know, so you know what? Because he was a criminal yesterday, it's justified to have killed him. There's a reason why there is a due process. There's a reason why jungle justice doesn't make sense. You understand? So it is not the place of the police to be both the judge and the executioner. You understand? You're supposed to bring in these criminals, bring them alive, you understand, into the system and let the system process them. Um, Mike did that Crosby say, except George Floyd was doped up during the kneeling. It doesn't matter whether he was doped up. The thing is, did it make sense for Chauvin to have been on his back for close to 9 minutes when the man wasn't struggling anymore? It didn't make any sense to me at that point in time. Even if Floyd was doped up at that point, do you think that he would have died if he wasn't placed in that position? And so those are the nuances that we have to see. You understand? We have to see it from, it's not an all or none thing. It's not like I support it, I don't support it. You understand? You can look at it from different angles and see that. Like I have said, I don't think it's a racial issue. You understand? On the other hand, I still turn back and I look at it and say, well, as much as it's not a racial issue, I don't think it was also because he was a criminal. It was because the police officer acted in a terrible manner at that point in time. Anan, welcome.
Hi, Anan.
Hello.
Yeah, tell us. Join the conversation, Anan.
I had a question for both of you, and for the guests in particular. Um, there are many arguments people make for why there is a lot of bigotry. Um, okay, and this is one of the arguments. Um, it used to be that African Americans, non-Latino African Americans, were only slightly more likely to be victims of violent crime than others. In 2020, the ratio was 8.1, a record high. Does this suggest that there has been a significant increase in systematic bigotry of some kind, and that things have gotten worse than they used to be a generation or two ago?
Violette, do you want to go?
So, Anan, if I'm being clear, you're asking what would be an indicator of an increase of bigotry?
No. The argument would be the police are not protecting African ancestry people from violent crime like they used to a generation or two ago.
Okay, so you think that the police they are deliberately under policing African American areas.
This
That
is a
is
critique
why.
that's made. Yeah. So the question is, how you do respond to that critique? That and many other gaps have widened. If you look at a multivariate least mean squared regression, and you look at various socioeconomic outcomes for non-Latino African Americans, and even if you hold income constant, a lot of things have gotten worse. And many people see this as evidence that um, bigotry and has increased, or what some people call structural racism. You don't have to call it that. And some people in BLM believe this. Some of their smarter, I don't know, data people believe this. So I'm asking, how would the two of you respond to this?
Wow,
I,
that's a
I,
tough question.
I don't know. I would also preface my answer by saying this is very specific to the American context, which I'm not very familiar with. I don't live in the States, so I wouldn't say. My guess would be that the reason for under policing, I'm going straight to the fact that maybe policemen are not being trained appropriately, or there's something in the training more than anything racial. That would be my reflex response. But then again, I'm not too familiar with the American context in that sense, so I wouldn't know how to reply.
All right, Larry, welcome to the conversation. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you very much. Absolutely fine. I was just trying to figure out, are we trying to discuss about systemic racism within the police force, if it exists or not? Is that what we're talking about?
No, it's that was just sort of a divergence from the conversation we're talking. Mostly, the conversation is centering around woke. Violette was telling us how she sort of took on the woke racial ideology when she was in college, and it wasn't going down well with her because there were inconsistencies and how she was able to retrace her steps and drop that sort of toxic ideology. So, but we just went off on a tangent to because Trey was asking some questions about George Floyd and his death, was it racial and all that. So that's why we went that route.
All right, because woke, gosh, I don't know what people mean when they say woke. I mean, were the Black Panther Party in the 60s, were they woke? Was that an example of wokeness? Angela Davis, what she was doing in the 60s and 70s, is that wokeness? Or are we saying it's something completely different from that? It's like, I don't know, just complaining for the sake of complaining?
I would say wokeness today would claim to be like the descendant of all of those, movements, Black Panther Party, Angela Davis. I think woke what we have today is an attempt to maybe rekindle these I guess these movements in a way, or the ideology behind these movements.
Because I think there is some basis to it that what they're complaining about does exist. It's just much more subtle, not just in America or the UK, maybe in parts of Western Europe like France or something. It's if we were to look at something, I don't know, like police treatment. I mean, you might find cases where there clearly was a situation of racial bias and stuff. But I don't know. I think what from what I'm gathering, you're saying there's an exaggeration in the 21st century from the so-called woke brigade in which they're exaggerating. You believe that they are actually exaggerating what's going on. So some of what they're talking about is happening, but they've exaggerated the extent to how regularly it is happening. Is that what you say? Okay, I see. And
Yes,
you choose people like BLM as being one of the culprits of exaggerating how bad things are.
yes and no. I think they're the most popular. But it's also not only about exaggerating, but the way in which they talk about these things can be quite, I guess, inaccurate and inappropriate. I think the binary that they use, mainly the white black binary, or the oppressor versus victim binary, is very dangerous because I think it's like it's no longer a reality and it's perpetuating certain things that aren't there to begin with.
Really, which things do you believe are not there that they've brought out?
I think when I say it's not there to begin with, like that might be a bit of an exaggerated statement. It is there, but not to the extent to which they claim it is. I think, like Charles have brought up earlier, there are racist people. Racism does exist, and I'm never disputing that or refuting that. I'm very much aware of that. I think where I I guess diverge from wokeism and and things like BLM and such is that we're so caught up in the binary of things that we don't, I guess, very we we don't
Okay,
identify them correctly, or too often where sometimes it's not even there.
okay.
I
So
have a
I can I can give an example of say sort of an exaggeration. So when BLM say that black people are being hunted, or when Barack Obama or Michelle Obama says that they fear for the life of their children, they fear that their children might be killed by the cops. I think that's an exaggeration to an extent where it's bordering on just telling lies. You understand? Roland Fryer, Roland Fryer did a study where he found out that there was actually um, a racial disparity in the way the police treated different races. So they were much more likely to be rougher with black quote unquote suspects than they were with white suspects. But he also found something interesting, that when it came to actually shooting people, that he was much more hesitant from his research to shoot black people or to kill black people. You understand? So up until the point where they used deadly force, they were much more, forceful on the black people. But at the point where they had to use deadly force, then the research showed that they were even less likely, slightly less likely to use deadly force on a black person as compared to maybe a white person. But now when
That's
BLM comes,
interesting. That's
when
interesting.
yeah, it is. It's interesting. It's
Mm.
interesting. So when BLM now says that black people are being hunted, what 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 does that mean? When is that true? It's true that it is true that, okay, there are systemic issues with the police. Maybe there are racist issues, but is it also true that black people are being hunted?
If I was to give you an example of a case, court case, Floyd v. versus City of New York. Now, what was that case? Basically, Floyd versus City of New York is a set of cases addressing the class action lawsuit filed against the City of New York, its police commissioner, Raymond Kelly, the mayor at the time, Michael Bloomberg, and named and unnamed New York City police officers. They were the defendants. And the court case basically alleged that defendants, which are the police, have implemented and sanctioned a policy, practice, and custom of unconstitutional stops and frisks by the NYPD on the basis of race and or national origin, which goes against the section 1983 of the Title 42 of the United States Code. Now, this actually went to court, and it's interesting. The decision which was made by the judge, which was done on August the 12th, 2013, Judge Schneidlin ruled that the police department had violated the Fourth Amendment by conducting unreasonable searches, and the 14th Amendment by systematically conducting stops and frisks in a racially discriminatory manner. Now, this was a case that went to court in America in 2013, and the judge ruled that that was being done, racially discriminatingly, stop and frisking on a racial basis. And this was a court case. So that kind of ties in with a bit with what some people might claim is, this kind of systemic racism, which is being implemented by the tools of the state, police force. Because don't forget, Mayor at the time, Michael Bloomberg, he was also sued. And who else? The police commissioner, Raymond Kelly. And this is a real court case that took place. And that was the ruling in 2013. So I don't know, when I see things like that, part of me thinks, I guess maybe there is some truth to it. Maybe it's not just, dust in the wind or hearsay. Maybe there is something there that, there is some plan. And then, of course, there's the other case, which was done by the NYPD 12 police officers who were led by a particular guy. And they filed a lawsuit, which is still ongoing, against the NYPD because they were given racial quotas, which meant that they had to arrest a number of Black and brown people. And there's an interesting documentary, and the guy who spearheaded this has gone on lots of talks on the radio. And there's a secret recording where he records where he's been told off by his supervisor because he's not towing the line and going out with the racial quota and arresting a number of people. So this is still an ongoing court case which has been going on. But the first one I mentioned, that one came to a decision where the judge ruled that yes, there was as it says officially, that there was racial, he ruled that the 14th Amendment had been broken because they were systematically conducting stops and frisks in a racially discriminatory manner. And this is Floyd versus City of New York. That's the case. So anyone can look at that one. So, I mean, that's a powerful case there.
What was the second case you mentioned? I'd be curious to read about it.
The second case, hold on, because that one hasn't completed, the second case. That one's still ongoing. It's the first one, which was completed. The second case, let me see if I can get it up for you here. I'll give you the name of the guy. He was, yep, NYPD Lieutenant Edwin Raymond blew the whistle on alleged arrest quotas pushed by the department. He became, I'm just reading, but that's his name. So if you want to do more research on him, he's Edwin Raymond. So
Yes, okay.
he and a couple of his colleagues decided to, file a lawsuit. There were 12 of them, the NYPD 12 police officers. They filed a lawsuit because they noticed that they were being pushed to, fulfill these racial arrest quotas. So the case is still going on. It's been going on for quite a while. It hasn't come to an end yet. But they've released a documentary about what's going on. It's now on YouTube, so you can watch it. But his name is Edwin Raymond. But that one, I don't want to push too hard because it's still going on.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't come to a decision. But the first one I gave you, Floyd versus City of New York, that one came to an end where the judge confirmed it. So,
okay. So yeah, that's a fascinating case that you brought up.
I mean, I
And
can put
this is-
the details in the chat for you guys. You can click on it.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure. Now, this is the sense in which I see the left, woke, and so many of these movements. The thing is, yes, they can correctly identify problems. You understand? It's not as if what they're saying is totally bollocks. It's not as if they are just pulling things out of their asses. The problem is with both the exaggeration and the solution that they prefer. Okay, take for example police brutality. From the case that Ellery gave just now, the case did not state that the police officers were asked to fulfill kill quotas. You get? They didn't say go out and kill this much black people. You get? Okay. Go out, arrest this much black people. That is a problem in and of itself. But BLM sees that problem. How does BLM interpret it? If BLM interprets it as, okay, there is systemic discrimination, there is a systemic issue against black people, you understand? Given something like this, one can say, yes, there is, and we should do something about it. But when they come and then they say black people are being, they are being haunted. Haunted is the natural conclusion of a haunt is that something dies, right? And someone dies. That's the natural conclusion of a haunt. So how do you move from arresting people to saying that the policy is to kill them? You understand? So that's one aspect of it where there is massive exaggeration of what's going on. Then the other problem I have is with their preferred solutions. Police brutality. What do they say? Defund the police, abolish the police. How is that going to help the issues on ground? Because the police were needed for a reason in the first place, to protect lives and property. Now they are not doing it very well, but it doesn't mean that lives and property still do not need to be protected, right? So what you do is force the police to do their jobs, not to say disband the police, not to say defund the police, or not to say, remove the police, because those things, the reasons why the police were set up in the first place still exist. There's still going to be criminals in society that need to be dealt with. You understand? So what happens when you disband the police, where you defund the police and all the police, you pull them off the streets? What happens? Crime, there will be an uptick in crime. And I think there are some data that show that post the George Floyd riots in certain parts of America, there was an uptick in crime, you understand, and all that. And those are, you can correlate them with either police being off the streets or police, just saying, you know what, I'm not going to put myself in danger, or I'm just not going to do my job. You get? And this is something that even happened, say, in my country during the NSAS protests, where there was protest against police brutality and all that. And we noticed that for a while after the protest, the police, they just hands off, they left the streets. And there was a particularly traumatic event for me when I was going home from work one day, where the hoodlums just took over the streets, they blockaded the streets, and they started taking money from all vehicles that were coming. The vehicle, and while doing that, they were also fighting with themselves. And they almost killed someone right in front of me. And the vehicle, just two vehicles ahead of me, was vandalized because he didn't want to give them money. And all this happened because the police had left the street. Now, there was legitimate reasons to have protested against the police in the first place because they were abusing their power. But should Nigerians say, you know what, we don't want the police at all again? So when the solution becomes much more worse than the problem itself, then we should begin to question such solutions. And those are the two issues that I have with such movements. Okay, welcome to the conversation.
Hi. Hi,
Hi,
everyone.
hi.
Hi,
Good.
Larry. Hi, Violet.
Greetings.
Yeah, my fellow Northerner, my fellow Canadian.
Where are you? Where are you in Canada?
I'm out west. I'm in Alberta.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Thanks, Charles, for having this enriching conversation. And I know I threw a couple of questions in the chat box because I kind of feel like my own journey into yeah, I mean, I really don't I'm averse to using the word woke. I would just say kind of was more coming into consciousness of inequities and issues that has happened in the world, right? And just basically coming to have a deeper understanding of those issues within your proper historical context. And I think my journey started in school, in the learning environments as well. Mm-hmm. I think there was an opportunity for my teachers or lecturers to have had the confidence and skill to help me navigate that journey in a healthy manner. But also what I realized was that there was this fear that basically meant that, teachers or lecturers couldn't tackle subjects as cohesively as was needed. So every student was kind of left on their own journey, which I kind of felt was a little bit of a letdown. I kind of felt like, in an institution of learning, you should have, teachers, professors who kind of know the terrain, right? Like who are pretty confident in what they know, and they're able to teach these subjects in ways that, could leave students having practical understanding of history, practical understanding of social issues and why they pertain, and also offer explanations that seem practical. So yeah, that was, kind of, is more of a statement, but that was, I guess, my statement / question to you, Violet.
Mm-hmm. I relate a lot to what you've just said. I think I realized that too in my studies, where there's a fear to kind of, dabble outside of the mainstream for fear of being called racist and all sorts of things. And so the consequence of that is that the students don't get the full picture. Unless they go out and ask. I went and asked my professors all the time. I was always in office hours, and they would always be so hesitant to share what they thought, and instead give me a reading list. They would say, "Oh, look at this. Go check this out," or "Here's a book that you could read," or da, da, da. And I'm grateful for that because it did give me the chance to, expand my horizons in a way. But other students were left, on their own.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that, Violet. Larry, sorry, I kind of jumped on late, and I guess I heard the initial stages of your I guess it was your kind of inquiry into understanding, what wokeness means or what wokeness is.
Yes, that is correct. I was trying to find out if wokeness in the 21st century is the same as, say, what Black Americans were doing in the 20th century. The likes of the Black Panther Party, Angela Davis, the New African Liberation Army, the Weather Underground, and all these types of people, or is it an exaggeration of what they were doing? So that was what I asked Violette, and she gave me her opinion on it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, my opinion would be, I think the way they approached it back then was, I think the way I understand it, or the way I perceive it from my understanding, is I think they were a lot clearer in terms of articulating and understanding, the issues they were facing at that time. And there was a more concise, cohesive picture of what they needed to do. Whatever it is that's going on for me in the 21st century doesn't seem to reflect that. And you see, the reason why I say that is for the singular reason that we're not even clear on the terms, right? Like, we're not even clear on the terms race. We're not even clear on the terms racism. We're not even clear on the terms racist. And I think, in my understanding that, and my interactions, like that, the lack of clarity on these terms creates a lot of conflation, right? It creates a lot of conflation because people do not fundamentally recognize the challenges presented when someone says something like, "Oh, systemic racism." You see what I mean? It's like, okay, how do you, like, it's something that I can say I understand, but how do you articulate it in a objective, precise manner? You see what I'm saying? It's and that's kind of, from my perspective, is just more the things I'm saying in terms of the language. Like, how do I understand it practically? Right? So, and I think, Charles, I'm actually super excited to get in the conversation with you and Steve over Kenny's book, because I think a lot of my thoughts are, I'm formulating it, but I think it's kind of more in this line of, like, when we say things like, oh, Black people, white people, is there an understanding that what we are basically saying or using is a race-based language? And also, is there an understanding that what we're actually saying is not something that has a biological basis? So how then does that understanding inform how we approach issues that we believe to be racist or racial? So yeah, I'm kind of waiting forward to Sunday. So Larry, that's kind of my own little blurb. Thank you, Charles and Violet. I think you guys are doing awesome. I see Steve has jumped on. Stanley, greetings to you. Hopefully we meet on Sunday. I got to jump off. I need to go pick up my daughter.
It's a pleasure talking to you. Take care.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Stanley, welcome. Jump in.
Hey, Charles. Actually, I have two questions. One of them, I understand the argument that you can't assume that, say a George Floyd was racial. However, could it have been racial? I've never heard that question asked. There's a lot of, hey, you can't say it's racial, but on the flip side of the coin, you can't say it wasn't either. Or am I misunderstanding something?
Obviously, it could have been, but
Okay, well that's really my point. We don't know, and we can't really know.
of course,
And
that's
then
the
the
point.
other,
That's the point. I mean, saying it's racist, saying it was racism is very definitive, and you have to be able to prove that it was. And
but
if you can't prove that it was, then it's
saying it wasn't is just is
no.
definitive.
Saying it wasn't doesn't mean you are picking one thing. It could have been 1,000 other things. So it's not a choice between racism and one other specific thing. It's a choice between multiple things, multiple factors, and
But it
picking
but
one
it but it
means you have
is a
excluded the
choice.
others.
It could have been a factor, correct?
Of
And
course, it could have.
people are free to draw their own conclusions. That's really
Sure,
my point.
sure, sure.
Okay, and then the other thing about systemic racism that Ogie brought up, um, you can't really be definitive. There's a whole argument about nuance. Well, nuance isn't definitive. So again, systemic racism is not something that's necessarily proven by data. It's nuanced. And the argument that systemic racism doesn't exist is not a nuanced argument.
I don't think anybody made that argument that systemic racism doesn't exist.
Not on the show, but it's kind of a conservative argument that systemic racism doesn't exist. I hear that a lot. So that's really more a statement and not a question. So
Right.
those are the
Thank you,
two
Stan.
things that were.
Another question.
Those were the two things that were kind of at the top of my head.
All right. Thank you, Stanley. Steve, jump in.
Sure. Strangely enough, bring out the wine glasses. Stanley and I agree on all three of those things.
Yeah,
something
of
that I wanted
course,
to
you both are on the left. You would
Well, yeah,
have
but
to
we
agree on.
disagree on so much. But
Steve, you're a false leftist.
yeah. So something I wanted to talk to. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Is it Larry?
Yes,
I
it
hope.
is. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I can't see it on the small cell phone screen that I've got. I apologize if I butchered that. No, I want to acknowledge a couple of things that you're saying, and I mentioned this in the comment section. Is that what we perceive as woke is not actually woke. Every single person in this room is woke by definition, right? It's a attenuation to injustice in society. Basically, that's what it means, right? So I think we could all say that we're woke by that definition. What I think the misnaming and mislabeling where that occurs is where we can assume that what we think is the woke is actually extreme militant leftism. It's leftism gone wrong. Okay. Now, let's say that we take their advice, right? Let's say that they're the bulldogs of society. We'll set them out into society and we'll say, find us injustice. But the problem is you don't make the effort for justice. The rest of us will do that. I could see the woke and the right and the center working in a symbiotic manner if we could actually just find a vocabulary that we could all agree on. Because there's many things that the woke, what we think of as the woke, is good at, and that is hunting out things that could be systemic racism or injustices in certain places. But the problem is they don't have a stop. There's no boundary to where they're willing to go, and it's the same on the right. So this generally needs to take a consensus of the entire society that we live in to say, okay, is this appropriate? Yes, no. Well, let's go. Let's talk about it. But giving one side, carte blanche ruling for what is right, wrong, and moral, I think is a dangerous precedence to set. I mean, we've seen that with, Hitler, and we've seen it with Stalin. I mean, we've seen it on both sides of that political spectrum, right? It's the authoritarianism that becomes the problem. And so my vote is to bring all of the factions of political nuance together and try and have a conversation about these things. But the thing with New York was, and the first time I found out about this, I about dropped my shorts, man, because I didn't know that there was anything such as stop and frisk in New York until a couple of years ago. It blew my bloody mind, because I was like, how is that constitutional? How did that ever make it past the Supreme Court? Like, did nobody even take it there? Because that is ridiculous. That is a ridiculous violation of civil liberties. You know what I mean? So, but the thing that I don't want to make the mistake of assuming something that happens in New York is representative of everything else that happens in the U.S. It is only representative of what is happening in New York. And I
disagree with that.
I think that's the point that I want to make. Well, the problem is when we say, this systemic racism exists everywhere, we're kind of putting a blanket over everything and not looking at the nuance of where systemic racism could occur somewhere else, right? So it's kind of a Mott and Bailey in that sense, and we might actually miss real systemic racism somewhere else if we're so focused on viewing it in one way because of some other example.
Okay, so Steve, two things. First, I disagree with your initial statement. Then I agree with every other thing that you said after that. I think that, yes, your sense about what woke was is correct. What it was, I would say, put it in past tense.
Yeah,
I think that it has shifted from its aboriginal meaning to something else currently. It is now used to represent something that is entirely different from what it was supposed to mean. And those things happen to words all the time. Words evolve, concepts evolve, and I think that word has evolved from being just aware of social issues to sort of virtue signaling and all the other things that's associated with it currently, because the people that are at the forefront of championing and saying they are woke, what is more their characteristics? Is it are their characteristics being aware more, or is it being just virtue signaling? And I would vote for people who say they're woke are more in the business of virtue signaling than actually being aware of whatever thing they think they're aware
Yeah,
of. So in that sense, what does it evolve?
I can agree with you on that, Charles, and I think that's a fair criticism, and I'll accept that. My pushback on that would be, it's too bloody broad. It's one single word that is incapable of representing an entire ideology, really, in that sense. And that's why, on the Discord, I put, what is woke but authoritarian militant leftism. Right now, that is specific. We can all understand what that might be, but woke, I mean, what is that? I think when we look to words like woke, we are really, really missing the point, right?
Well,
and we're mislabeling the entire problem.
It's essentially a pejorative.
That too, which is not helpful either.
I think so.
Yeah, it's not helpful.
It's a pejorative. That's because the people that are wearing the label of woke, they have given us a lot of things to be pejorative about, somewhat, in that sense.
Well, but I mean, you're looking in one direction though, because to me, someone like a Tucker Carlson is woke. How is he not virtual? How is he not virtue signaling? And it was people like Tucker Carlson that basically made woke a pejorative.
Okay, now this is how I would answer that question. I think on the right, what you call the woke of the right, the people will just say that's alt-right. You understand? And what you call the woke of the left is woke. You understand? So that's how I would put it. Of course, Tucker Carlson is virtue signaling. You understand? But people are more likely to just say that's an alt-right point. So in this sense, even the terminologies themselves are balkanized along ideological lines, such that woke is used to represent, in quotes, Steve's extreme leftist ideology, while alt-right is used to represent extreme right ideology, even though both
Okay,
of them
so
basically
is
use the
Tucker
same term.
Carlson alt-right?
Well, I don't know. Many people would say yes.
I would
I
say
don't know.
yes. Hands down, I would say yes.
So,
That's what he gets paid to do. He gets paid to be a mouthpiece for what I would consider authoritarian militant rightism. There's nothing in between, it seems like.
so Violette, do you want to comment on any of this?
There was a lot said. I'm not familiar with Tucker Carlson, but I'm googling him right now. So I'm going to
No,
read
it's okay. You don't have to do that.
But, I think the act of virtue signaling, I think in a way is necessarily a part of being woke. I think when you woke, you virtue signal to a certain extent. To a certain extent. I think when I mean woke, I mean I think the people the pejorative term, right? I wouldn't consider myself woke anymore. I think I'm aware or just conscious. And so that's my little bit. But there was a lot said. I didn't get a chance to ponder on everything. But that's my little 2 cents.
Can I add one more thing real quick, Charles?
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's also, along with virtue signaling, there's this thing called tone policing, right? This is something that specifically, I would say the furthest left like to engage in, where they literally are policing the tone of conversations. And it's meant as a way of politely, I would say, make the suggestion you need to check your privilege. Like the what we all consider what it would be extreme militant leftism loves to control speech, and the far right doesn't do it enough. Blatantly, I mean, like, if I was going to be honest, I mean, sometimes they let some shit slide that is just unacceptable. Take for example Tennessee, a school district in Tennessee banning the book Mouse, a very pro Jewish book that highlighted the atrocities of the Holocaust, and it was banned on the day of the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Like, that is bloody disgusting. Bloody disgusting. So when I see these two opposing standards, I want to lose faith, but I can't. I don't want to, because, people like us, I mean, I think all 6 of us are rational human beings. We have drastically different ideological views, but we can all agree that's screwed up, right? And we can agree both of the extremes can screw up massively, but they don't check themselves. It's super annoying.
Yep. Very, very, very true. Which is why I don't like extremes. I don't. I think. I think either extremes are wrong, or they're getting it wrong. So that's why you can't replace a bad take with an equally bad take.
Come
You
to the
have to
dark
put.
side, Charles. Come to the dark side. Libertarian
No,
all the
no,
way.
no, no.
Libertarian.
Well, I'm pretty much a libertarian at this point, or I've always been,
You are.
sort of. So,
Welcome to the
so,
party.
so the point is not to be so ideologically possessed that you don't even see value in an alternate argument. You're so closed off that from the get-go you are walled off. You think that, and I see this a lot when certain people answer certain questions, both from the right and both from the left, even more from the right. They when they are engaging in a conversation, it's as if they are responding to a preconceived question, which might not even relate to the question that someone is given at that particular point in time. It's as if they already have a canned set of answers, and if the question is looking very similar to that thing, it just short circuits and they give you that answer. But you'll be like, no, this isn't what I was asking. I was asking a much more nuanced question. Why are you going straight to this point? Your answer might have made sense in another context. It isn't making sense now. So I think the middle ground is the way people need to have, more conversations with themselves. Like Steve said, the left wants to control speech too much, and the right doesn't do a very good job of controlling it. So the middle ground would be a good place to start. You understand? Maybe the left should loosen up a bit and okay, allow people to be much more expressive, and maybe the right shouldn't just be, you know what, you can do whatever you want to do as long as it doesn't affect me. But that isn't how life works. You understand? We also have to be able to find a balance that say, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but there are some lines you shouldn't obviously cross, and if you cross it, there are going to be repercussions. You understand? So that I think is the way forward.
I have a comment. When you
All right.
talk to actual woke people, they ask questions, data driven questions. They'll point out one econometric study after another about gaps and how these gaps are widening. And they will say that no one responds to them. And they're right. Almost nobody will ever respond to their actual questions. Now, I'm going to give you questions from three people who are not woke, right? So these are very reasonable people: Brianna Greyjoy, Nathan, Ali Rizvi. Do you all know who they are?
I know Brianna Joy. The others, no.
So Ali Rizvi is one of the leaders of the global ex-Muslim movement slash what was it, the atheist Muslim movement, and he's very anti-woke because the woke try to kill him all the time, right? So for obvious reasons. However, he asks these questions too, and he will point out over 100 econometric data points, and he will say, why does no one respond to them? And he's right, no one does. Wilfred Riley is one of very few who try, and Wilfred Riley will constantly say, why are the economists all silent? Why are the political scientists all silent? Why is everyone silent? And the reason is they're all afraid for their jobs, right? That's the real reason. But they are right that no one responds to them. So, for example, if we hold income constant, so that's we're taking out a class, and we look at K through 12 performance in education, the the ADOS performance versus non-ADOS performance, the gap has widened over time, right? So that suggests we have had increasing systematic racism, right? And there's no response. Nothing is given anywhere to that charge. And we have similar widening gaps in the UK. Canada, the problem with Canada, Violette, and maybe you can explain why this is. Canada will not release data by racial demarcation. So there's no way to know for sure what's happening in Canada. We can just do proximate estimates based on specific cities or something like that. I don't know if you think that's a good thing or bad thing. That would be another question I have. So I
Good
just
thing.
wanted to hear your response.
Well, to answer the question as to why Canada doesn't have like any racial data, is because like the multiculturalism that Canada stands by, like you're not really allowed to ask people about their race. It's always voluntary, and it's never like a part of like any legal or like official government form. Like it's not a thing we do over here. And I think in a way, I mean, it's how can I say, it's not a good thing when when you're looking to do research according to racial categories. Like that's obviously a thing that maybe we should adjust. But I think not having people check any like racial black, white, Asian boxes, I think is okay. Well, that's me. That's my biased raceless opinion. But
Yeah.
that's why there's no racial
Well,
data.
I disagree with you on that. I think Canada is what they're doing is good. I think it's great. I think that's
To not
what.
have the racial boxes.
Yes, yes, and to not collect data based on race and all that, I think is a fantastic thing. You understand?
But
To
then when it
me,
comes
I
to
think it's
a
better.
point like where Anan is bringing up, like you kind of need it to see to it
No,
to
you don't need
keep
it.
track, I
What
guess.
what you need to keep track of is how are people faring, irrespective of their,
Enough.
their color. You understand? So why does it matter whether it's you want to aggregate it by by race or not. If people are not faring well, it should be a cause for concern, and the government should do something about it. You get, so that's my point. So Stanley has a point he wants to make about the media and the left. So Stanley, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's something, I'd like to talk to Steve about at some point, but actually there are three things I want to throw out there, but there was I think that blaming the media, I know the mainstream media has a lot of influence over public opinion, but I actually think blaming the media is an easy way out. If something like a George Floyd case, you know, um, you know, if CNN is basically saying it was a racist, sort of issue, I don't see the media as the problem. I see the problem as, say, people in Minnesota not dealing with police issues. I think the public, or the people in a local setting, if the police are doing things that they're either not doing their job well, or just not doing their job, as in not policing because they're afraid. That's not a media thing. That is literally the people on the ground or who live in a city or jurisdiction. That's the bad guy, is the public, the voters, not the media.
All
Yeah,
right.
we can hold the media accountable, though.
Well, you can hold them accountable, but the media doesn't train police. The media doesn't vote. They may influence the vote, but I think throwing the blame on a woke media is really just um, placing the blame um, elsewhere. The media doesn't create the problems in, say, a Chicago. And the media isn't telling, Chicagoans to accept, the way policing is. I really think that blaming the media is a cop out. People need to blame themselves. If you're living in a place, where there's a high crime rate or something like that, that's kind of a voter issue. It's not the media.
All right. Great point, Stanley. So we've gone on for about 2 hours, 30 minutes. I think it will be a good time to bring this conversation to a close. It's almost 1:30 a.m. here, and I have to go to bed. So
I just wanted to say, Charles, it was a pleasure talking to you, Violette, and all the other panelists. I look forward to your next show. Thank you very
it's
much.
a pleasure too, as always, Larry. Thank you for coming around. So, guys, let's just get one thought in. Then we'll end for tonight. Steve, Stanley, and Violette last. So let's go. Steve, are you there?
Oh yeah, I am. No, I don't have anything to add.
All right.
Well,
Thank you, Stanley.
it was
Steve?
it was lovely hearing from Violette today, and you guys covered some really great topics. And I always enjoy hearing both of you speak, whatever platform you guys are on. But I think, I keep coming back to, like, I just love the fact that these kind of conversations are happening, because they weren't 2 years ago. These conversations weren't happening. If they were happening, they were happening in celebrity spheres, and us normal Joes and Janes, we didn't have the opportunity to have these conversations. So it's good that people are trying to cross the border to nuanced discussion. I think it's a really important thing. So I just want to thank everybody, and thank Charles specifically for having this podcast and giving people the opportunity to speak on these topics.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So we've come full circle, and we're going to end with Violette again. Violette has been a tremendous guest today, and she's been very, very insightful and very engaging. And we agreed with on a lot of things,
We did.
disagreed with just a few, which is a good thing. It's a
That's bound to
healthy sign
happen.
that yeah, it's a healthy sign that we're not bots. So we're human beings with our individual personalities and our individual thought processes. Yeah, Trey, I'm going to share my thoughts. So, so, um, so, so just tell us what your parting thoughts would be on the show tonight, Violette.
Yeah, well, first of all, I was very grateful to be a part of this conversation. I'm new to this, but I'm really enjoying my experience so far, and I hope to continue down this path and share with, I guess, like-minded people. So thank you very much for giving me the platform to share my experiences and my opinions, and I hope to be a part of many more conversations like these. Should I share where people could find me?
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, yeah, yes. Go ahead.
So you guys could connect with me on Substack. I have my Substack publication called Candid. So you could look me up at Candid Thoughts in one word .substack.com, where I write articles every Saturday, where I share my opinions on different topics such as history, philosophy, literature, music, cinema, race, identity, all that good stuff.
Can you drop that? Can you drop your Substack link into the chat?
I don't know if I have. I can't add any comments in the general comments.
You know
I can
what?
do so in the
Send it
private.
to me. Send it to me. I'll put it in the description box of this video. So, guys, I'm going to put Violette's contact where you can reach her in the description box. So please go over there, go subscribe to her Substack, and follow her on any other social media platform that she might be on and she wants you to follow her on. So,
Go
thank
read
you
my
very.
article on wrong speak.
Oh,
Sorry?
yes, yes,
I
yes.
said go
So
read my article on wrong speak.
yes, so Steve
Wrong
Steve
speak.
wrote an article, and the article was that good that Wrong Speak said, you know what, Steve, I don't think you should be the owner of this article. We're going to take ownership from you, and we're going to publish it in a much bigger platform. And the funny thing is that, or the beautiful thing is that this is Steve's first article out there, and it's gotten this much traction. So big congratulations to you, Steve. And guys, please go. Steve, we'll also get the link to your article and put it in the description box of this video. Sorry, I almost
Thank you,
forgot.
Charles.
So please go read Steve's article, and also read Violette's article. And um, Trey wants me to share my thoughts, and I am going to share my thoughts. Trey and Devon, they always want me to share my thoughts. So, as regards the topic, from woke to awakened, and I think we've established, or I have established at least on my case, that the word woke used to mean being aware to social ills and social injustice and wanting to do something about it to change it for better outcome for people. But I think that that aboriginal meaning has been lost, and I think that it has evolved into something else much more sinister, where it's more virtue signaling, where you just want to show people that you're a good person. It doesn't even require you to, do anything good, anything substantive. You just want to, shout down any person that doesn't agree with you. So in that sense, that is why I see the word woke. And circling back to what Violette shared in her story, which was a very powerful story in the sense that she grew up in, even though she's mixed race, she grew up in sort of a race neutral environment where race wasn't an issue. Then all of a sudden, she took on this racial burden, and she started having things that feeling things, experiencing things that she would not have experienced if she didn't take on certain ideologies, and how finally she was able to bring herself back to the normal states where she was earlier. She retraced her steps, and you found that, okay, what I was doing, this ideology that I was adopting, wasn't a good ideology, and it wasn't me, it was making me another person which I wasn't comfortable with, and it wasn't honestly answering certain questions for me. So she came back to, you know that point, which I also agree with. And I also gave a personal note of mine that reading a book called Roots made me angry at white people because I saw the injustices that they had done on black people. And yeah, I'm black, I'm African. So those things are going to affect me too. You understand? But as I grew up much more nuanced, I saw that I have to hold people accountable for what they do and not what their ancestors did. You get, so the white person is going to be terrible with me today. I'm going to be terrible with him back. I'm going to give him crap as well. But if he's going to be nice to me, if he's going to be friendly to me, just as I've met incredible white people on this platform. I mean, started doing this last year. Prior to then, I had never had any white friend. I had never had any contact with any white person. You understand? But I've gotten to meet some incredible white people, and I'll treat them with the respect that they treat me with. And I'll treat them as humans. You understand? There are not going to be any preconditions. I'm not going to say you must do this before you relate with me. That's not how I work. So as regards the BLM issue, as regards George Floyd, what happened to George Floyd was truly terrible. It was an horrendous thing. Nobody should have to go through that. But the framing around it being due to racism is what I'm not comfortable with because I don't think there's evidence for that. And if there's evidence for that, and you show me the evidence, I'll be on your side. I'll jump with you and say, yes, this is racism. And I believe racism exists, and I believe it's a real problem that should be dealt with. But also, I also believe that crying wolf um, is not a good way to solve certain problems because when the problem finally comes, nobody will want to listen to you because you had cried for so many times. So that's my sense. Or those are my thoughts on this conversation. So I want to thank you all for for your viewership. Thank you for liking, for subscribing. If you haven't liked this, just like right now. Your comments, everything. And thank you, Steve. Steve is my patron. You guys be my patron. Steve is my patron. Thank you. And you also contributed via super chats today. So thank you very much, Steve, for your contributions. And I appreciate you all. And I hope to catch you all in another live stream soon. So for now, it's goodbye and have a great day slash night slash afternoon. So bye guys. Violette,
Bye,
bye.
everyone.
Stanley, bye.
Bye.